If you're into true scary stories and true crime, make sure to subscribe to the channel for new videos every week. This story takes place last summer. My entire family decided to go to Virginia Beach for a vacation. I stayed behind with the dog because, well, she was abused and doesn't do well with strangers. So having the neighbors watch her or put her in a kennel for a week, that was not an option. She's also my dog, I paid for her, so she's my responsibility. It was no big deal though, as I kinda look forward to having the house to myself for the week. The first couple of nights were pretty normal, but the third night is when things started happening. I went to bed, shut and locked the bedroom door, and made sure I had my dog with me. I drifted off to sleep, but suddenly woke up in the middle of the night to Alexa in the kitchen saying,
"Sorry, I can't understand that."
Then classical music started to play. My dog ran to the door and started to growl, but I shushed her because I was pretty sure that someone broke into the house. I stayed up the rest of the night, and I was so glad when daylight broke. I cautiously opened my door, looked around every nook and cranny, even checking around the outside of the house, but there was no sign of forced entry. I decided to unplug Alexa until my parents got home. I was able to put the whole thing out of my head until the next night, when I woke up again to the sound of Alexa once again saying,
"Sorry, I can't understand that."
and classical music playing again. Alexa wasn't plugged in, so I was scared to death. I didn't sleep much the rest of the week. I was so relieved when my family came back. My mom asked me, "So how was it when we were gone?" I said, "Oh, it was fine." Later in private, I told her my experience, and she turned a pale white and said, "You too?" Apparently, our house was previously owned by a husband and wife. Sadly, the wife died in the house. I was really young when we moved in, so I didn't remember it. But when we moved into our house, it was completely empty except for a piano. My parents called the previous owner about this, and he said that he didn't want it. It brought back too many memories. So we decided to keep it and just never got rid of it. Apparently his wife loved playing the piano and would play it every night. I'm pretty sure that was her playing the piano when I was alone, in the middle of the night. My scariest Home Alone experience happened during one of the first times I was left alone as a teenager. It was a random Sunday when my parents took my brother to an event, and I was just enjoying the freedom. Everything was going great until I decided to leave the house to visit a friend. Despite my parents specifically telling me not to leave, I did so anyway. In the moment, I didn't think about it and completely forgot to lock the door. Hours later, I returned home and immediately sensed something was off. I had a terrible gut feeling, and as I looked around, I noticed some of the cabinets open and items scattered throughout the house. I was startled, but still hesitant to believe that someone had broken in, given how quiet it was. To reassure myself, I began calling out throughout the house to see if anyone was there. There was no answer. I started to feel a little bit better until my phone rang. I looked down and saw it was from an unknown number. Seeking some distraction, I answered the call, only to hear deep, heavy breathing on the other end. Fear gripped me. It felt like a scene straight out of a horror movie. I kept repeating, "Who is this?" until the call abruptly ended. Just 2 minutes later, I received another call from the same unknown number, and the deep breathing continued. This time, it almost sounded angry, and I grew impatient as the person still wouldn't speak. They hung up again, and the frustration began to set in. Then, yet another call came in from the unknown number, and the breathing started once more. Out of nowhere, I hear a deep, quiet voice whisper, I'm in the house. My heart stopped. I had never been so scared in my entire life, but I tried to act tough, thinking it might just be a prank call from my friend or brother, who knew I was alone. Suddenly I heard creaking noises upstairs, followed by loud footsteps. Luckily, I heard something drop before the intruder began sprinting down the stairs. I managed to get a head start and dashed into the woods, immediately calling the police. When they arrived, they found the door wide open. Although they never caught the person who snuck in, I feel fortunate enough to be able to share this wild story. When I was 17, my parents went out of town for a long weekend, and a girlfriend of mine was staying with me. So while I wasn't actually home alone, it was just my friend and I. While we were driving home from work on Friday evening, we passed this beat-up truck with two creepy men, probably in their late 30s, early 40s. They immediately started making sexual gestures at us as we sped by. Suddenly, they began chasing us, almost running us off the road. They ended up following us most of the way home, but I pulled off a few streets away from my house to be safe. We lived in a somewhat rural area, so there were only a few houses near mine. We lost them, or so we thought, and headed home to get ready to go out that night. My parents were redoing the second story of the house, so the windows and walls were newly put up with a new roof. So basically, the windows were just covered up with a thick construction tarp. As it started to approach evening, I decided to take a shower. When I got out and dried off, my friend went in to take one as well. After getting dressed, I peered outside and happened to notice a truck of those men parked on the side of the road, about 150 yards from our house. I go to the bathroom door to tell my friend, and that's when I start seeing flashlights being shown in the windows. I hit the floor and crawl in the bathroom. We quietly made our way to the kitchen, as we heard sound and voices coming from the construction area on the second floor. We grabbed two large kitchen knives and ran to the back door, nearest to where my car was parked. Suddenly, we heard steps coming down the stairs. That's when we bolted out the door, got in my car, and sped away. This unfortunately was before cell phones and we only had pagers. After driving a couple miles down the road, we stopped at a neighbor's house and told him what was going on. He called the cops. They went to the house, and it did appear someone had broken in through some of the upstairs tarp, and the lock to the downstairs door was also busted. We gave a description of the car and men. They notified my parents, who were hours away, so we spent the night with my neighbor. 5 or so hours later, the cops pulled the men over and found property from my parents' house in their car. They were arrested and charged. The scariest part was their intensive criminal history, including violent attacks on women. We didn't return to the house until the construction was complete and an alarm system was installed. The men were charged and were sent away for many years. An old friend of mine told us a story of something scary that happened to him a few years back. One day while he was enjoying his morning coffee on the back porch, he noticed a large disheveled man emerging from the tree line. The man began to charge at him. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, he quickly bolted all the doors and called the police. Unbeknownst to him, the man had broken in the day before through a basement window and had been squatting there overnight. The intruder left the basement door unlocked and was now making his way up the stairs towards my friend. Armed with his home defense gun, my friend aimed it at the intruder as he approached down the hallway. He fired the first shot, which was rock salt, but the man didn't seem affected. The second shot was a rubber bullet aimed at his chest, yet the intruder continued moving towards him, clearly out of his mind. The third shot, which I can't specify whether it was a buckshot or a slug, created a hole in the man's chest. Despite the injury, the intruder continued towards my friend, who was ultimately wrestled to the ground. However, the injury finally caught up to the intruder, and he collapsed on top of my friend. Throughout this ordeal, the emergency operator had been listening to the entire exchange, which mostly consisted of my friend saying, "Stop or I'll shoot," followed by the intruder's threats. The police arrived quickly, and the incident made local headlines. There was a criminal investigation, but my friend was cleared of any wrongdoing. It was later revealed that the intruder had escaped from a mental hospital in Baltimore just days before, and he had traveled around 50 miles into the rural area. I haven't spoken to my friend since the incident, only his parents. I can only imagine how this experience affected him, especially knowing that that man had been living in his basement.